Hey everyone, I'm Elaine and I'm a conversation designer. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about my journey into conversation design. I actually wrote a bit about it in a Medium post, and it's actually one of my most highly viewed articles on Medium. But I have to be fully transparent. When I wrote it, I had just gotten my first job offer as a conversation designer, so I was feeling very, very happy, very optimistic, and very validated in my journey and the struggles that I went through. I do want to talk a little bit about those hardships, how I was able to overcome them, and in general, just talk a little bit about what it's like to be a conversation designer, if this is the right career path for you, and any tips that I would give you to get started. So if you kind of follow the timeline of my article, I had found out about conversation design one fateful day when I was coming home from work. At the time, I was working as a vendor for Google at a call center, and I don't know why, maybe just like randomly or like the universe decided that this is going to be a pivotal moment in my life. I got a YouTube recommended video of the Google I/O conference from 2017, and specifically James Giangola's talk about conversation design. And I don't know, I watched it all in one sitting. I felt super inspired. I felt super mind blown that this was a career in general. I was like, what do you mean people are writing dialogues for assistants? Like, I didn't know someone actually did that, and like that was their actual profession to do all day. Like, it wasn't just like a short-term 3-month project or anything. So I felt really, really inspired, and I was like, this feels like the perfect career for me, because I was looking for something that I could do in voice technology. I actually had worked on a few different projects related to machine learning because I was a contractor for 3 years after moving to the Bay Area, and I was like, this is the perfect fit of like creativity and also being a little bit data driven. So yeah, I tried to learn as much as I could about it. I took a ton of online courses, I think through LinkedIn Learning, through Udemy, all those different sites, and I was so inspiring, I guess, or my passion was so infectious that I actually saw a job opening for the Siri team at Apple, and I just went for it. I gave it my all. I talked to the hiring manager and I was like, look at all these courses that I've done. This is what I want to do. Please, 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 like, give me a chance. And they did. So I got my first role, technically not as a conversation designer, but just kind of getting started as a metadata curator for Apple. It was really fun. Like, I got to work adjacent to designers. I got to see projects that went live in the real world and see people using them and talking about things that I have helped on. And that just made me feel even more passionate about getting started. When I saw that first project go live, I was like, okay, now I gotta give it my all. Like, I need to really, really try to make this like my full-time career and not just keep doing contract projects all the time. So the things that I started doing was I got online. So I was on Twitter. I remember using Twitter first as kind of like a diary, my learning progress report. So I would go in and I'd be like, this is what I learned today. And at the time, I remember I was learning how to code websites, and I was like, yeah, like I learned how to use, this command in CSS. Like, look how cool my website looks. And I also used that as like my diary for conversation design things. So I would go to webinars, I'd go to events, see past talks, or read different books. And I just kind of go on Twitter and just be like, yo, I've read this, or like I learned this thing, or look at this like draft that I have of my chatbot. Like, and it was really fun. Like, it was kind of like a low effort way to kind of just like tell myself what I was learning and also share with others, because I did eventually find a community on Twitter that specifically worked in voice tech. I didn't know that at the time, but I found a lot of people who shared the same interests, and it just kept made me feel motivated to keep going. And then I saw this one Design-a-thon announcement that was hosted by Botmock, which is no longer in operation, RIP. But anyway, they joined together with a group called Voice Devs, and they did this Design-a-thon competition only for voice-related apps. And so I entered, I got 3rd place. My team was able to get that recognition. On LinkedIn, I was like, look, my team got 3rd place in this design competition. And then from there, I just started meeting people, because I had kind of uncovered that there's like this really well-established voice tech industry. And all I had to do was just go online and meet everybody. So that's a little bit of what I did. I met a lot of people who gave me a lot of different advice regarding books that I should read, Kathy Pearl being one of the most highly suggested ones. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's Designing Voice User Interfaces by Kathy Pearl. So that's always something that I recommend to people even now. And ultimately, by the end of the year, I was like, okay, I'm gonna give it a try. Like, I'm just gonna see what's out there in terms of jobs, and maybe I can apply to stuff and interview. And this is where it gets really interesting, and that I kind of omitted in my blog post, because I was feeling really enthusiastic and I was applying to these jobs. I had my resume ready, I had my portfolio website ready, because I was part of different networking groups. So I was recommended for a certain role where they were actually making a new conversation design team and they wanted to hire their first designer. And I came in and I was like super passionate, like no one could stop me. Like obviously I knew what I was talking about. But when it came to experience, I was lacking a little bit. When it came to my portfolio walkthrough, I didn't really have a storyline ready. I didn't really present like a clear problem and solution. So that kind of, didn't make my application go very well. And then on top of that, I remember I had prepared like conceptually how to do like the design process. That's what I did for my case studies, but when it came to actually getting interviewed in a panel and people were asking about experience, if I had put things live in production, if I had analyzed metrics, and if I hadn't analyzed metrics, which KPIs would I track, I fell flat. Like I didn't know anything that they were asking me. So obviously, even though I had made it to the final round interview, I didn't get the job. I was very devastated. I was like, oh my god, like I've spent all this time learning this. Even my job didn't help. Like, what am I doing? Like, can I even get hired? Like, that was my biggest doubt, is like, okay, like why am I trying so hard? Like it'll probably take me like 3 years to get hired. Like why am I trying to do it in like a year? Or I remember thinking like, am I even gonna get paid? Because I wasn't really seeing a lot of salary transparency data out there, so I really wasn't sure if this was like a viable career to do if you really wanted to have like a lucrative career, salary. Like I didn't know any of that. Yeah, so I almost gave up. I was like, maybe I should just become a data scientist. I was like this close. And actually, I won a raffle. I won a raffle for Voice Tech Global's first cohort of the Advanced Conversational Experience Design certification course. And that was such a lifesaver. Like, to be honest, even though I had like this metadata curator job from Siri, and I had my project that I won at the Botmock Design-a-thon, because I didn't have like that experience of really doing like a real full end-to-end design process that incorporated real users, I was just not going to get anywhere, I think. And this course came really at the best time, because financially I wasn't able to afford taking one of those fancy bootcamp courses, so this really it really gave me that. And on top of that, we had like a capstone project for the course, and on top of that, for our capstone presentation day, we did a showcase in front of a lot of different industry professionals, which was actually really helpful because they gave me a lot of feedback that I otherwise would have omitted from my case study. And so after all of that, I drafted up a new version of this case study, I added it to my portfolio, and then I got my digital certificate from taking this online course. And that's when my luck turned around. Suddenly, I was very selective actually. I know previously I was a little bit liberal with like the kind of jobs that I was applying to. If it said chatbot developer, I was like, yes, I'm gonna apply. But I would say like the second round of applying and interviewing, I was very strategic. I was only applying to things where I kind of knew someone related, or like I knew them from like a networking group, or they had posted about it and I had contacted them directly as a hiring manager. So yeah, I kind of came at it with a plan, and I think overall I applied to less than 20 jobs that had like conversation design roles. Half of them I didn't hear back from at the time, and then but all the other ones that I did hear back from, all of them wanted to interview me. And I don't know if it's actually because of that certification course or because of all of the edits that I made to my resume and my portfolio site that kind of showed a little bit more of my thinking process, and was more easy to see that I really understood the concepts that I was going to be working with. Yeah, out of those 20-ish applications, yeah, half of them came back, and I personally got through to, I would say, like final rounds with 2 companies that I really liked, but ultimately I chose NLX. And if you know me from other things, you've heard me introduce myself so many times as, hi, I'm Elaine, I'm a conversational UX designer from NLX. So what is a conversation designer? Probably I should have started with this first, but overall, conversation designer is someone who focuses on the voice and tone of a virtual assistant or chatbot, and it's really more about crafting a strategic conversation between a computer and a human in a way that both parties can understand each other. So that's kind of like a little bit of the basic definition. There are many different ways that this interaction can take place. Obviously, if there's a screen, if there's no screen, what kind of device it's on, what kind of context the user is in, many things. And overall, my experience of being a conversation designer has been great. I really find it's challenging and really mentally engrossing. Overall, like I feel like I'm able to be creative, but also kind of approach things with an analytical approach, because the bulk of the work of being a conversation designer is less about what you prototype and what you kind of build out initially, and it's more about learning from real data, real users, and taking that feedback and making a better product. So in order to do that, you have to kind of really be someone who pays really close attention to detail. There might be trends in research that you need to keep tabs on. There might just be ways that people are interacting with the system that the system isn't picking up, and you have to go and kind of like be like your own detective, figure out what's going wrong. Sometimes you'll have a team to accompany you, and sometimes you won't. So I would say overall, it's a very fun and exciting job. Like, it's still relatively a new field, even though the technology of being able to have voice interactions with a computer has been around for many years, for multiple decades actually. It's still kind of in a beginning phase in terms of having like an actual career ladder and structure. Overall, I would recommend this career to people who really like working a lot individually, who really like communicating a lot to different kinds of people, and who are really interested in the psychology of people interactions. So if that sounds interesting to you, I definitely highly recommend it, but I also do have to give a couple of warnings. In general, I would say this career is not great for someone who wants to have a clear forward structure for where they want to progress in their career. And I say that because it feels like right now conversation designers only have like a conversation design role. Like there's no real progression into something more senior, or I guess like a clear structure on like what the different levels of being a conversation designer actually means. So if you're someone who really values like, you know, seeing like at places like at Google or any of the big companies that it's like they specifically have levels like in IC4, IC5, those things, conversation design may not be for you, just because most companies don't have that system implemented for this field, again being so new. Also because a lot of people from this field actually are converted from other fields, so they themselves are pretty new. And I would say another thing about this career is if you really like having like a fair, transparent salary information, this might not be for you, because it took me a really long time to figure out what proper compensation is. And it was only because of word of mouth. Like I would specifically ask people like, hey, what's your comp? Or I would have people later coming up to me and saying like, hey, I'm getting this kind of offer with this package. Like, is it good? Like eventually I started accumulating this data anecdotally, but I really don't think there's like a huge support system to kind of find out this information otherwise. The third thing that I would say is like, if you don't really like it, don't do it. Is working by yourself, being heralded as an expert, even though maybe you don't feel like an expert. And I say this because a lot of companies, especially smaller startup companies, when they hire a conversation designer, they really expect this designer to really do everything on their own. Like you sometimes will literally be deploying your own designs. And whereas in larger companies, you might have a support team of like PMs and engineers and researchers and linguists. Sometimes smaller teams will literally just be like you and a developer. So just be aware that sometimes if you really are looking for mentorship, if that's something that's really important to you, you might not find it a whole lot. You might just need to be one of those people who is really self-sufficient and resourceful, and you're willing to go that extra mile to get the information that you need. If you're someone who needs a little bit more hand-holding, if you're more comfortable just knowing that there's a ton of resources out there to support you, probably don't go into this field. And then finally, some tips that I think would help people maybe trying to get started. There's a lot of free resources out there on Medium specifically. Like I said, that I wrote my article on there. A lot of people share not just like career related things, they also share a lot of like design perspective things. There's a whole ton of people really that I would recommend you to follow, and I'll actually link them below. And in terms of like in general where to get started, I'm just gonna link down a ton of resources like books, maybe conferences, events, but in general the number one tip that I would give you on like getting started is just reach out to people. Like this is still like a semi-small community. It's still very like very much everyone kind of knows each other, so just reach out to people. Like they'll be more than happy to answer your questions, or they'll be more than happy to refer you to other people so that you keep getting more and more perspectives. Like I'm someone who also just recently started mentoring online, so I could be a resource if that's something that you're interested in. But yeah, just in general, networking is really big for a conversation designer. You really need to learn not only how to communicate your own story, but how to communicate your own issues that you're facing. And being able to reciprocate that with someone else is really going to help you out. So yeah, I hope that was helpful. This is my first YouTube video, so if you don't mind helping me out and giving me a like, that would be really great. But in general, yeah, you can find me online at Elaine in the Bay. I'm generally on most platforms, and I really hope to do more videos like this. I know finding something related to conversation design is still very limited here on YouTube, so I hope I can help change that. And yeah, if you have any suggestions for other topics that I should get into, just let me know in a comment or just like send me a DM. And yeah, hope you have a great day.